Tennessee Valley, what's going on? Welcome to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. Hope you guys have had an amazing week out there. So this show is where we basically help you take control of your financial future. I'm Garry Thurman, CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. I'm here today with Tim McDermott, Bobby Fudge, Tanner Moore. And guys, each week we're going to break down things going on in the financial world. We're going to look at financial topics. We're going to look at ways to protect your money, ways to invest your money. And look, it doesn't matter if you're retired, getting close to retirement, or you just want to be prepared for retirement. That's what this show is all about. And we're going to throw in a little fun as well. But like we do every single week, I want to start with the guys, just see what's going on in their lives. And Bobby, you had a bathroom project going on this weekend for Memorial Day, buddy.
We did. My wife and I decided we didn't like the popcorn ceiling in our master bathroom anymore. So we got that taken down. Man, I'll tell you what, those guys earned every penny they do making that.
So you learn a lot doing DIY, don't you?
Yeah, and the rest of the popcorn ceiling in the house has never looked better.
There you go. That's awesome. What about you, Timo?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Didn't have my daughter this weekend, so sometimes I look around and I'm just like, what is there to do? So some home projects myself,
nice
as well, just cleaning up and getting some stuff upgraded. So it was a good weekend, though.
It's all right. And Tim, I know you had a lot of friends in town.
Hey, we did. We had some friends come up from Florida, man. It was a good time. We got out and rode around the mountains a little bit and did a lot of cooking, it feels like.
Did a lot of cooking.
It was good, though.
That works out.
What was your favorite meal?
Good question.
I did make some jambalaya yesterday.
Nice.
And I'm pretty excited about that.
That was really cool.
Are you freaking
I had
out?
a great week as well, guys. You guys know I was out of town, and I got to play one of my favorite golf courses in the world, Valhalla, thanks to my buddy Joe Wilson, and it was awesome. 63, 64 degrees both days,
perfect.
walking on that course. Yeah, it was really, really cool. So, guys, I did a interesting research here, and I really want to dig into the show today with this, because what I did is went out there and tried to find out, folks between the ages of 55 and 70, what are they looking for on Google? What are the most searched words or phrases they're putting out there? Because we're really talking about pre-retirees and people post-retirement in that age category. So kind of want to call this show the retirement mindset in 2025. What are people thinking out there? And, Bobby, I'm going to start with you. One of the hottest topics out there right now is, will Social Security run out? We've been talking about this for a while, but what are your thoughts there?
Yep, we run into this question all the time when we meet with folks that come in and talk to us. And I guess the easy answer to the question is yes, if nothing changes. I looked up some numbers this morning, and 2052 is a number I found with Forbes, and that would equate to a 6% reduction in benefits, right? If nothing's done before 2052. But there's definitely some things that can happen. There's this really neat tool out there that I found. There's a nonprofit called the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is kind of funny, right?
What is that acronym, Bobby?
I don't know if that has a cool acronym, but they have what they call a Social Security Reformer tool. Mm-hmm. And you can go in there and you can pretend that you're a legislator and go in there and change a whole lot of different variables with Social Security and see how it's affected, either positively, putting more money into the system, or negatively, more draws out of the system.
Yeah.
And the neat thing is if you go out there and play with it, there are a lot of things that can be done to really shore up Social Security.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some things, Tim, I'm going to jump to you real quick. I mean, I don't see Social Security running dry, boys. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I mean, would you want to be the president or the Congress that allows Social Security to, dissolve? Tim, what are your thoughts on that? I just don't see it going anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if you could pin it on one president or one, office that actually
I agree.
depleted it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Somebody would be held accountable for it at the end of the day, and I don't see that happening. We do talk about this a lot, and we end up, I think personally, we're probably going to go into a marginal bracket probably for Social Security. In other words, if you make XYZ money, you'll probably get a portion or none of the Social Security benefit down the road. I think that's what will probably happen. I don't know when or what that looks like. What I've been telling folks, anybody under the age of 50 right now, hey, let's plan for retirement like Social Security won't be there,
Yeah.
right? And then when it is, it's just gravy on top.
That's right. It helps, right, Tanner? I mean, especially when people got healthcare costs and different things like that, they need that Social Security check.
Yeah, when it comes to, really any government program that we talk about, Social Security, when it was enacted, Medicare on my side, when it was enacted, there's been various forms and changes to both programs, right, since they've been installed. And so just like with Medicare, there's always changes depending on which legislation is in charge. Social Security, we feel, is going to be the same type of, potential changes in the future.
It's crazy. So let's jump into another Google search out there. And I found this, Bobby. I looked this up this morning. It's a stat that just says 7 in 10 boomers say they feel financially unprepared for retirement. Boys, that's big right there. So, Tim, I'm going to jump with you right here. How much do I need to retire comfortable? That's a big question, right?
I would call that the proverbial $1 million question.
Yeah, that is, yeah. $1 million.
Is $1 million enough to retire on? Maybe, maybe not. Really depends on what your lifestyle is, what your income is. Do you have a pension? How much is your Social Security check coming in? What are your expenses, right? And these are all things that we sit down and talk with you about to say, here's the plan that we're building. Here's how we take this lump sum that you've built over your lifetime and develop it into an income stream. And I say this a lot. It's really not about the amount of assets you have. It's about the income that you have coming in. And I use the analogy of a farmer, right? A farmer may have a piece of property worth, $2-3 million in today's world. But that's not really what produces the income. His income may only be $70,000. Which one dictates what car he buys, where he goes out to eat, what groceries he gets? It's the $70,000 income, right?
Right. And Tanner, don't you think, and Bobby, you can jump in here too, that this is so individualized. I mean, how do you want to live retirement? Then you can find out if you can be comfortable or not. Are you going to continue to spend the kind of money you're spending now? Are you going to reduce that spending? I mean, there's a lot goes into that.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it because it's new it's not familiar for people. We're working, our days are busy from 7 a.m. to maybe even 7 p.m. or beyond,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And when the paychecks stop and you retire, now that's all free time, right? And so a lot of things and variables can change. So being educated, talking to somebody that does this for, a profession that sees a lot of different scenarios is really important to try to predict what that life is going to be like so you can understand what we call our spending plan is going to be.
Yeah. And Bobby, the word comfortable stands out to me because did we not talk about this all the time with clients? Like, we want you to wake up every day and feel like it's Saturday,
Yeah,
right?
that was the big
Be
part
comfortable.
of this. And comfort is different for everybody.
Right.
Right. Comfort looks different for Tim than it does for Tanner, than it looks for Gary. And so that's part of having a plan to make sure you're comfortable in retirement. Is first we're going to sit down and figure out what does comfort look like in retirement for you. Because if you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. Yep. That's not a plan. So we really need to sit down and figure that out. And before we can figure out whether or not you can retire, quote, your comfort level, we need to figure out where you're at and what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. One of the other questions that was put out there is, can I retire at 62? I think that kind of goes along with what we just talked about.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, the only caveat I'd throw out to that is we've talked to probably half a dozen people this year, me and Bobby, who came in and said, hey, I'd like to retire now, right around 62, 63. And it was significantly different for them just to wait a couple more years till age 65, because then they didn't have to pay for that health insurance out of pocket for the next several years.
And are you seeing that, guys? Is there a trend there where do you feel that people are wanting to retire sooner than later? I mean, I think we're seeing a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen some that want to retire in their 50s, and we're seeing some that don't care to keep working. We just talked to a guy the other day who's stepped down from his high up position in this company, took a board member role and half the salary because he didn't really want to quit, but he wanted to get rid of some of the stress in life. Right?
Well, that's a big deal. It's funny, gentlemen. I went out yesterday with Rhonda and just rode around Council Fire, played 9 holes, just practiced. Right. We were behind a group of guys, and I knew all of them, so we were catching up with them on every tee. And about the 3rd hole in, one of the gentlemen turned around and he goes, Gary, I'm so glad you're out here, because I need to come talk to you. My guy is retiring. I don't like the other guy that much. But he said to me, Bobby, and we'll finish here. We got about 1 minute. He's like, Gary, I'm 65, but I'm still working. Is that okay? I'm like, yes, that's totally okay, right?
That's absolutely okay. And if you can scale back, kind of semi-retire, and still have access to healthcare benefits, that's huge.
Yep.
Not only do you still have a little bit of income coming in, but, man, Tanner can talk to you at depth about this. That gap between whenever you retire and 65 when Medicare kicks in, your biggest expense is probably going to be medical care and medical insurance.
So expensive.
So let's finish on that note right there. Medical care. I mean, that's something we're going to talk about this in the next segment, Tanner. But how expensive is Medicare going to be in the future? Is it going to go up? Is it going to continue to go up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question in the sense.
It is a loaded
because,
question.
You know,
Yeah.
it can reduce. A few years ago, the premium for Part B dropped, right?
That's right.
Typically, though, it is going to increase in cost, right? Healthcare inflation is considerably outpacing, cost of living adjustments when it comes to Social Security.
Healthcare inflation is insane, guys. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. If you look at the amount of money it takes to just have in-home care, which I'm doing for my mother right now, I mean, it costs a lot of money, several $100s a day. So you got to be prepared for things like that. So we talked about, will Social Security run out? We talked about how much do I need to retire comfortable? Can I retire at 62? I'm going to skip the recession question. Another question was, how do I retire in a recession? I hope we're not seeing a recession anytime soon. But that was another good question. But we're actually out of time for this first segment. When we come back, we're going to dig into more questions that are being searched out on Google for folks between the ages of 55 and 70. But listen, if you have questions about Social Security, here's how easy this is. All you got to do is text the words Social Security to 877-706-7526. Again, that's 877-706-7526. Type in Social Security. You'll get a full report on the new, most current Social Security guide. Then you can come in if you have questions, and we can help you put that Social Security plan together. Again, text the words Social Security, 877-706-7526. Hey, guys, we'll be right back with more of Plan Today on tomorrow.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. I'm Garry Thurman with Guardian Investment Advisors. Be a countdown.
If you've amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. This is one of the greatest tax windows in history. Now is the time to take advantage of this tax discount while you can. All of our advisors are fiduciaries that specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, estate planning, and more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis.
Welcome back to Plan Today on Tomorrow with Guardian Investment Advisors. I'm Garry Thurman, CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. I'm here with Tim, Tanner, Bobby. We got Tristan over in the corner making sure we do everything we're supposed to be doing right. And we're having a fun conversation today because we're talking about the most Google searches out there for folks between the ages of 55 and 70. So a couple of things we already covered is, will Social Security run out? How much do I need to retire comfortable? Can I retire at 62? There was a question in there about how do I retire in a recession. We can hit on that if you guys want to. But I love some of these next questions because it's how much is enough? The real cost of retirement. So let's dig into this. I thought this was interesting, Bobby, and I'll start with you, that people are putting this out there. I think it's they're testing themselves maybe, seeing where they're at against others. But it's average 401k balance at age 65.
Yeah, I would caution people to go out and Google things like that because the numbers are going to be absolutely all over the place. And Google, as good as Google's getting and as good as AI is getting, it doesn't know you, and there's not a plan for that. But just in case you were wondering, I looked up the number.
Me too.
So I wonder what your number is compared to mine, and I hope they're different.
You're telling me Google doesn't give you the same number every time?
That's right. So Forbes says the average 401k balance from somebody between 60 and 69 years old is $408,000.
Wow. I got 272,588.
Right? So those numbers are so different. And that kind of speaks to what we're talking about is you need to talk to somebody who knows your situation.
Well, now the Forbes, I think we can kind of do this regional too, right? Like, maybe the 401k balances up north might be higher,
Sure.
Or out in California versus, here in Tennessee. Because, Tim, I think it was you and I did a show not too long ago about the average Tennessean is about $250,000. So that falls a little more in line to what you found.
Yeah.
So, but guys, listen, so many people are intimidated or have a little fear of coming in and speaking with us that only have $250,000. That's still a lot of money.
Right. And you need planning probably more so than somebody that's sitting on $1 million. Now, we also have to look at cost of living in these places, because your point there, Gary, is people tend to make more in California, New York, those sorts of areas.
Right.
Listen, you spend it a lot faster in those places, too.
Right, yeah.
Your money doesn't go nearly as far.
Yeah, we have my sister-in-law and her brother her husband live out in Seattle, and the income that they make is drastically different than what it is over here in the East Coast usually, but it's crazy what they spend.
Right.
It's a dramatic difference.
So it's funny. You guys know I was out in Phoenix not long ago with some other advisors out there, and we were actually talking about payroll. Like, how much do you pay this person? How much do you pay this person? And Tim, you just made me think of that, because there's a couple of guys in Seattle, really good friends of ours who had advisors, and they were asking me some questions. And, how much do you pay, your ladies? What's the hourly rate? What all you giving them? And when I told them that, they were like, do what? What really? And I'm like, yeah, keep in mind, we're in Tennessee. I'm not in Seattle. The cost of living is a lot different. But it was kind of a shocker to the system for them to, see the difference there and what it truly costs to hire a good person.
All inside the same country too, which is it's crazy to see the big difference geographically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Tanner, I'm going to hit you up on this one, because I think we're going to spend a few minutes on this question, and I want all of you guys to chime in here. I think this is a very important question, but the number one fear in America is running out of money. We talk about that all the time. Now the number two fear in America is actually getting sick, because longevity risk is real. So the question that is being Googled, how much does healthcare cost in retirement? Tanner, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Googling that again, you may get different answers, right? When it comes to an actual study done by Fidelity, right, in 2023, the average healthy 65-year-old couple can expect to spend roughly around $315,000 combined in healthcare costs. And the kicker there is that does not include long-term care costs.
You didn't Google that number though, did you?
No, I did not. I got that from Fidelity. Now, but when you think about what all encompasses that $315,000, right? Medicare premiums, health insurance premiums, right? Any supplemental benefits, anything that has to do with insurance, but also your copays, your medication costs. You go to the hospital if you have deductibles. So all that's combined into it, right? And so when you start looking at that number, and you could relatively live for another 20, 30 years, right? It does add up, right?
When you think about we just talked about the average 401k balance, right? And anywhere between 270 and 409. I mean, even if that's the average, and you're going to go out and spend $315,000 just on the healthcare part, how do you pay for the rest of life?
Yeah.
Right.
That math ain't mathin', is it?
That math ain't mathing. I mean, we hear these things all the time, guys, but now, we talk about long-term care all the time. It's real. Bobby, I'll go to you here. It's real. I mean, 70% of us are going to need some type of long-term care. So if you don't have that built into your plan, it could really put your portfolio and your family in a little bit of danger.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that $300,000 number that Tanner just mentioned, again, doesn't include long-term care costs. God forbid you need some sort of long-term care. That's why having Tanner Moore here on staff is so valuable for our clients, because we can kind of get a really good idea of what those costs are going to be for you in retirement. Health insurance is a complicated thing.
Yeah.
You have group coverage now with your work. You've got some sort of personal policy, maybe from the exchange, before you retire at 65, or you retire early until 65, or Medicare. It's all over the place. I struggle to figure out what a lot of these plans will cover and all those sorts of things. So you really need to come in and talk to Tanner, because we can figure out kind of what your exposure is to those costs. And it's something you really, really need to take into account in retirement, because that can blow up a plan. Unlike any other variable out there is healthcare cost if you don't plan for them properly.
So Tim, what are some solutions that we can look at for folks, for that, if they're one of those 70% that needs some type of long-term care? What are some solutions that we can offer them?
Yeah, I mean, we can go out and we can look at doing some traditional long-term care policies, right? That's kind of the go-to, and I can't tell you the number of folks that have come and sat down with us and said, we looked into that, but it's absurdly expensive, and it doesn't even cover everything, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of tossed that one to the side if we can help it. We're looking more at the big picture of trying to more or less self-fund long-term care in a way that we can leverage the asset to pay for more long-term care if it's needed. And there's some cool programs out there now that will either take the death benefit of the program and pay it out to you early to take care of some long-term care, or they'll leverage the cash value to give you 2 or 3 times the value of that cash to help take care of some long-term care needs. Oh, and by the way, it can be tax-free.
Yeah.
Yeah, traditional long-term care is a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And even folks that have had it, we talked to so many people that have had policies for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
They just keep getting more and more and more expensive. And you get to a point where you're just kind of wondering, do I continue to throw money at this thing?
Right.
Hoping I don't need it, and then
Feels
you
like
lose
you can't not do it at
Right.
a certain point, right?
Right.
I tell you some things we've done though, gentlemen. And by the way, Bobby, that number is on average right now is 28%. It's 28% average increase in long-term care health insurance
Every
now.
year.
28%
That's wild.
in traditional long-term care. But the thing is, we've had folks come in that have had a long-term care plan, right? And it's a solid plan, but it's very expensive. We were able to reduce the benefits on that particular plan and then maybe throw in a fixed index annuity with a multi-benefit rider. So now they have the same type coverage, but they're paying a lot less in premium. So there's some creative ways we can do this as well. One of the things I want to point out, the asset-based long-term care plans that Tim was talking about, there are some questions, so you do have to get approved, but they're fairly easy. We've not seen many people not be able to get that triple benefit, which is really nice. But then if you're just too unhealthy to get any type of long-term care, that's where those fixed index annuities with a multi-benefit rider really come into play, because guess what? There's no underwriting. Most of them have a 2-year waiting period, but there's no underwriting on that. So I really like it. All right, gentlemen, we got about 3 minutes left here. Tim, I'm going to you. How much should I have saved by 60?
$2,350.
Ooh, Lord. You're way behind.
That's again kind of a tough question to answer, right? How do we take that number and decide how much income you're going to get from it, right?
Right.
I think the mindset of and I understand this mindset, right? How much do I need to save, because that sets a goal for you in the future to say how much do I need to put away each month to get to a certain number so that I can retire comfortably, right? That's kind of the mindset of things. And I totally understand that. But we have to look at the full picture, and the full picture would say how much can that pile of money actually generate for me in income. So here's the rule of thumb, right? The rule of thumb says if you're going to start saving, if you're looking for a savings goal, at least 15% of your income needs to go into some type of savings on a regular basis so that you are saving for retirement at a regular or reasonable pace, right? So if you're making $100,000 a year, $15,000 a year needs to go into some sort of savings plan, whether that's a 401k or a Roth IRA or just a savings account, right? 15% needs to go somewhere. The pile of money, right? We can have that conversation. That's a conversation you'll have to come and see us, because we want to know what your expenses are, what that income gap is, to say, here's how we get to the income that you want. And then we can work backwards to say, this is the pile of money that you need, right?
Yeah, and I just want to tell people, if you want somebody to take a look at it and give you some advice, come and see us. I promise we've seen your position.
Yeah.
We've worked with people with no money. We've met with people with negative money, and we have some experience here with people that are worth $100 million. We've seen it. Come talk to us.
Yeah, you got to do it. The whole point of this, folks, is are you ready to retire? Some of these questions that have been put out there in Google land, really, are you ready to retire? Is your portfolio set up for that? Here's how easy this is to figure this out. GIAquiz.com. GIAquiz.com. Do it from the comfort of your couch. Go in there. There's 35 questions. Answer those 35 questions. Then you're going to get a reality check. You're going to get a report that says, hey, am I retirement ready or am I not? And a lot of cases, you may not be. That's when you need to come in and see Tim, Tanner, and Bobby. Put a plan together. Start planning now so you don't have to worry about the future. Plan today so you can own tomorrow. Hey, folks, we'll be right back.
You might not be able to retire if you haven't thought about future inflation and future taxes.
Y'all good with the
when
show?
You're going through your retirement plan, are you
Tim, I'm
thinking
coming to
about
you first
inflation?
here.
Does your current plan
We allowed to talk?
have inflation built into it? The national average is about 3%. Of course, it's been really, really high the last few years, but it has come back down. But you've got to build inflation into your retirement plan because we don't want to run out of money. Another thing I stress to my clients all the time is we got to think about future taxes. Our government has one source of income, and that is taxes. And I promise you, with $34 trillion in debt, 2 more trillion being added this year in 2024. The interest only on our national debt is $1 trillion. Folks, taxes are going to go up. You've got a window of opportunity in 2024 and 2025 while taxes are still on sale. Let's start looking at maybe taking some of your taxable money to tax-free money. This is all part of the wealth guard planning process. We'll do this for you when we're creating an income plan. You got to think about inflation and you got to think about taxes. Give us a call today and come in and see myself and my team, and let's put this plan together for you. Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. I'm Garry Thurman, CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors, sitting here and talking about money with Bobby, Tanner, and Tim, having a great conversation today because what we did is we went out there to see what are folks between the ages of 55 and 70, what are they putting into Google? What are they searching when it comes to retirement? So here's some things we've covered. Will Social Security run out? How much do I need to retire comfortable? Can I retire at 62? How do I retire in a recession? What is the average 401k balance for someone 65 years old? How much does health care cost in retirement? And how much should I have saved by the time I'm 60 years old? So another thing that's being popular out there is safe growth. A lot of people are searching, and instead of searching the stock market, they're researching ways to grow their money safely. And here's one of the main questions that we're getting from that. And Tim, I'm coming to you on this. Are bonds safe right now?
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
So we just talked about what we've been doing this last weekend at the beginning of this show. I had some friends come up from Florida, and one of my friends brought me a 4 or 5 page little packet and says, hey, my banker came to me. She has a healthy savings account and says, hey, why don't we throw this into this account? Because all the big banks right now, you're making 0.01%, right? You're making no money on your money. Mm-hmm. And so they said, why don't we throw this into this type of account so we can earn some interest on it? And she looked at it and showed it to me and said, hey, should I do this? It sounds attractive. And it was a bond ETF portfolio, right? Mm. And I said, is it better than what you're doing right now? Maybe. Yeah, probably, right? You're at least going to make something, right?
You're going to get some yield at least.
I don't know what he said to her. But she took away that it was guaranteed interest and you couldn't lose your money. Mm. And that's not true, right? I don't know if that's what he said to her or how it went, but that's not really true because bond ETF values can fluctuate. Just like stocks, the bonds inside that ETF are traded on a regular basis, right? Even had a turnover rate on the page right there at 90%. That tells you how much that's being turned over, right? And so when interest rates are on the rise, bond values are dropping. And so where are we right now? We just changed our environment. Bobby, when? 2022?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
We changed from a lowering interest rate environment to a rising interest rate environment, putting bonds in a pretty rough situation. And yields are still only about 4%. So on her form, it said you're going to average a yield of 4.4%. The guy takes a 0.5% fee. And so she would have ended up netting about 3.9%. But that's not including that cash value depleting if interest rates do continue to rise. And so I said, look, if this is what you want to do, if you want guaranteed interest rates, I said either look at fixed annuities, because those are the best paying fixed interest rates right now, or I just pulled up bankrate.com and I showed her a high yield savings account that's at 4.3%. I said, you don't have to fool around with any of this, pay anybody to do it, and it's a guaranteed interest rate where that may not be.
Yeah, what a lot of people suffer from is what I call recency bias, and it's been forever since the late 1980s where interest rates in this country have been steadily declining.
Yeah.
So bonds have looked attractive and quite frankly have been attractive for a really long time.
That's right.
But when interest rates hit zero, where can they go from there? I mean, they have to go up.
Well, no, Japan went down still.
Well, you can't have negative interest rates, right? But you really don't
very
want,
unhealthy,
you
right?
really don't want that. But so when you hit zero, most likely they're just going to keep going
That's
up.
right. That's right.
And so what that means is bonds are just going to decline in value. Yes, your friend can clip a 4% coupon on those bond yields, and that's the income that banker was probably highlighting. And that's correct. He's not wrong in that point. Right. But the principle is not safe, and as interest rates continue to go up, which I think they will, that's going to lose value. So you really have to be careful with bonds. And are they safe right now? Probably not.
Well, let's go back here, Tim. You just did a study on bonds over the last 10 years, correct?
So yeah, and it's not even necessarily a study. You don't even have to do a study. Here's the thing. This is simple, right? I like to keep things very simple, and I like to be able to be fact checked at the end of the day. AGG is the ticker symbol for an aggregate bond index in the United States, and you can Google this, right? Fits very well in today's radio format.
Yeah, do Google this.
That's right.
Yes.
Put it in Google. Just type in AGG. You're going to get, but you don't have to click on any pages or any links. The first thing that's going to pop up is a chart of that stock. And just go look at the 5-year and the since inception date on those. Since inception, AGG was down just right about 4% last time I looked. From 2003 to today, down 4%.
So 20 plus years, and all we hear is, we have people coming here all the time, Bobby, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. They feel like they're safe. They feel like they'll never run out of money. And we know that 60-40 rule just don't work anymore.
That's right.
It just don't work anymore because of the bond situation that Tim just talked about. I mean, bonds are not, the best place to be for your safe money anymore. So, Bobby, I come to you. Next question. Best alternatives to the stock market. That's something that's being searched right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the stock market is a little bit different of an animal than bonds or the bond indexes are. And so we'd really have to talk to you and figure out what are your goals in the stock market. If you want a reasonable amount of return with principal protection, there are fixed indexed annuities that can do that. There are fixed annuities that can do that. You are giving up some of that upside, but generally, if we plan for you appropriately, that's okay because you have a 0% floor. You can't lose money in those products. And some of the indexing is great, right? It's not the same as it used to be 10, 15 years ago. You can get a very reasonable amount of return. Some of them can give you rates of return that are equity-like, but we just need to talk to you about what you want to do and what you're trying to solve with that equity piece that you put in the stock market.
But I want to follow it up, if you guys don't mind, real quick. So 60-40, 40% bonds. So are you saying that there's better options for that 40% money, Bobby? Is that kind of what you're hinting around at right now?
Yeah, without a doubt. I'll just say it. There are better options than a traditional 60-40 split and 40% in bonds because you are likely going to lose money in that. And there are better ways, certainly better ways to produce income. Tim just alluded to that, and give you principal protection. So if you've got a big bond holding in your portfolio right now, come talk to us about that.
Yeah.
That's really a time bomb right now.
And listen, if you're looking at your portfolio and saying, I don't see anything in there that says bonds, if you own mutual funds, there's a good chance you have bonds inside of those mutual funds. We'll run a report for you that kind of breaks that out and shows you exactly what that looks like.
And Tanner, I want to talk about the unique way we talk to folks about this. We use a bucket system. Explain that a little bit to folks.
Yeah, really our bucket strategy is we try to keep it simple, like Tim's referred to earlier. You have red, yellow, and green buckets of money. That red bucket of money is going to be the money that you have at risk, right? Let's say that's invested, right, in the market. It could go up. It could also go down. But we need some money. We need some, as Gary always says, skin in the game when it comes to that, because with inflation, that's going to help keep us on track with our planning. The green bucket is really a safe bucket. This is going to be money that's accessible. The yellow bucket is that money that's going to be liquid and accessible, like in a bank, for example. The green bucket is your safe money, right? That's going to be guaranteed. That's really where we're building that income level. And really, life isn't a game, right? I get that, but the game has changed over the years, right?
Absolutely.
And income is a big need, and that's probably the number one, topic talked about in retirement now. It's not about how much money I have; it's what is my income.
What was it George Foreman said? You guys remember that?
Was it
It's not what age am I going to retire? It's at what income am I going to retire? So I mean, Tanner, you're absolutely right. And speaking of income, Tim, I'm coming to you. 60-40 rule was you do 60% equities, 40% bonds, pull out 4% a year. You have money till the age 90. That's the old rule. We have fixed index annuities right now that are paying out 7.5% guaranteed for life. Not 4%, 7.5%. But what is a fixed index annuity, Tim?
It is an insurance program designed almost 100 years ago now, I think.
It's been a while.
Developed to give it an income for life back to the insurer, right? Now, these have developed into a wide variety of different options so that you can solve different issues along the way. But the annuity at the end of the day gives you a guaranteed no loss. As long as you're going with a fixed or fixed indexed annuity, you're looking at a guaranteed no downside. You can't say that about variable annuities, so be careful of that. If you have a variable annuity, I'd love to review that for you. I think those are becoming outdated, if you will, and so there's some better options for that. But if you could get a guaranteed no loss and still get a better rate of return on the upside, why wouldn't you do that as your safe part of the portfolio?
Correct. Bobby, we've got about 90 seconds here. Why do annuities get such a bad rap?
Because people don't understand the programs.
Yeah.
And they've come such a long way in the last 10 or 15 years that if you've got a bad taste in your mouth about annuities, maybe your parents had one that didn't pan out, that's probably because they had an older annuity and it may not have fit them well. There are so many more options now, and these contracts have so many bells and whistles on them that it's really worth revisiting and having a conversation about it, rather.
Yeah.
Because they solve a whole lot of problems and can provide some guarantees in retirement that, quite frankly, the market can't.
It's kind of like buying IBM stock back in the 90s.
There you go.
Saying it's still a good stock today, right? And it's not bad, right? It's not the end of the world, but there's certainly some better options out there.
Right.
So I think from what I'm hearing in this conversation, gentlemen, with our bucket system, we want to make sure people still have money in the market, right? We want to make sure they got that yellow bucket of money for emergencies, but this green bucket of money, that's really where the fixed index annuities are going to take over the bond portfolios and provide a guaranteed income. And you can actually do a joint guaranteed income, by the way. Even if it's your IRA, your 401k, you can have an income that pays you and your spouse for the rest of your life. Listen, if you want to know more about annuities, it's real simple. Text the word annuity to 877-706-7526. Again, that's the word annuity, ANNUITY. Text it to 877-706-7526. You'll get a full report. Then you can come in and have a conversation with the guys about, is an annuity right for you? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But let's find out. Again, text the word annuity, 877-706-7526. Hey, guys, we'll be right back.
Have you ever refinanced a mortgage to get a better rate? What if you could do the same for your
All right, guys,
retirement?
last one. This is only 38
Interest
second
rates
break.
rise, investment strategies shift. Fixed and guaranteed products are stronger than they've been in years. If your financial advisor hasn't talked to you about refinancing your retirement, you could be leaving money on the table. It's time to explore your options. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today for a complimentary review and see if refinancing your retirement makes sense for you.
Welcome back to Plan Today on Tomorrow. Garry Thurman, CEO, Guardian Investment Advisors. I'm in here with all of my wonderful advisors this morning, Bobby, Tanner, Tim. We're having a great conversation about the most Google searches out there for folks between the ages of 55 and 70. I just think this is so interesting. We've covered things like Social Security. What do I need to retire comfortable? Can I retire at 62? We've talked about average 401k balances. We've talked about health care in retirement. And how much should I have at 60? We really just had a deep conversation about bonds. Are bonds right for you, not right for you? What's some alternative to the stock market? And what is an actual fixed indexed annuity? We love them here as long as it's right for you and you're in the right one. But I want to keep going here, gentlemen, because this is a big one. How to beat inflation without losing sleep. Is inflation going down, Bobby, in 2025?
Yeah, inflation has gone down in 2025. The last numbers that printed were for April, and inflation was down to 2.3%, which is a huge reduction from the 9% spike we had a couple years ago. But what a lot of people don't think about is unless you have a negative inflation number, prices are not going to get less expensive.
Yeah, inflation going down just means it's getting more expensive slower.
That's right.
I like that.
And that's really what we want. Inflation in an economy is a healthy thing. Again, like we talked about negative interest rates in a previous segment, you really don't want negative inflation. That's not healthy for an economy, but you certainly don't want 9% because those numbers really, really hurt people day to day.
So Tanner, I'll ask you this: inflation, yes, the numerical number. Can I say that? Is that correctly, guys?
That's
the
right.
numerical number is down. But you have rent, you have Hadley Faith. Have you seen the cost of goods going down at all?
Being a parent of a 4-year-old, no. Right? I am the ATM, and you learn that as a parent, right? But it's a fun ATM because that relationship of parent and child, is something that unless you're a parent, you just don't understand, right? Once you become a parent, you do. But cost of goods really aren't going down, right? When we're talking about this, so a lot of people aren't seeing that at the register, right? They're seeing their income coming in. Maybe it's not increasing in the way they want it to, right? They go out and get another job to try to increase that income because when they're going to the register and they're spending, they're not seeing any differences with costs. They're continuing to rise.
Some things have came down. I mean, gas is down, right? I mean, there are some cost of goods out there that have came down, but it's still expensive to go to the grocery store, Tim.
Absolutely. Eggs may be a little less expensive, but they're still up, I think, like 50% over the last year or something like that. I mean, that grocery bill isn't getting any cheaper throughout retirement or throughout the next several years.
Yeah, that's an important thing to note, too, is that 2.3% number that we just talked about. That is a blend of across
everything.
Everything.
Right. Even though price of eggs are down from, whatever that number was, I think they were down in that last inflation report.
Right.
Everything in total is up about 2.3.
That's right. And so if you have some things that have actually, had some price decreases to get that number down, that means there's a whole lot of things that you're spending way more than 2.3% more on.
Yep.
And some of those things are really important. Housing inflation is well above average.
Oh, yeah.
There's a handful of things you absolutely have to pay for. You don't have a choice that are way higher than a 2.3% number. So you really, really have to plan for inflation in retirement.
I think one of the biggest things we're going to see, gentlemen, is auto and home insurance. I really do, especially with all the horrible things that we've had going on in our country this year with the floods and the tornadoes and fires and all these different things. Wall Street Journal had an article just a couple weeks ago, Bobby, you and I talked about it, where they're expecting auto insurance could increase by 53%.
Yeah.
That's tough, gentlemen, especially if you're living on a budget. That is tough. But Tim, talking about all this inflation, someone's going into retirement. They just retired. They come in and they see us, and they're like, guys, look, I'm worried about future costs. I'm worried about that longevity risk you guys talk about all the time because things are going to get more expensive. How do I protect my retirement portfolio against inflation?
You should be worried about that, right? That will be a constant problem throughout retirement. But I can tell you this, inflation has stayed pretty steady over a long-term report, right around 3%. And so if we can get a 3% inflated income throughout retirement, we should be okay. The way to do this, right? You get the Social Security. Social Security does get a COLA adjustment, but COLA adjustments have not added up to an average 3%, maybe 2%. I think it's 2.1. If you do something like a fixed indexed annuity, you're probably getting a steady income for life, which is good, but that doesn't help you keep up with inflation. So to Tanner's point earlier, he talked about the red bucket. That's why the red bucket is important. The best way, the only real way to keep up with inflation is to be involved in the stock market.
Yeah.
As those companies do better and increase their revenue because people are spending more, their earnings become more. And so that's the only true way to really keep up with inflation, in my opinion. And so it's important to have that red bucket of money to supplement income later on in life.
Yeah, you make a good point, Tim, in that, and we have periods of higher inflation, that 9% rule. Companies are going to have to pass those costs on to consumers.
Yeah.
And because they have more in revenue, the prices tend to go up a little quicker than normal in high inflation rate environments. And you see those in your returns in your equity positions. And so that's why it's just vital to have that red bucket of money. Because it's going to grow faster than any other bucket by design, right, to make sure you keep up with those increased costs.
I love it. So, guys, I'm going to jump around here a little bit. And, Tanner, I'm going to ask you one more question about Social Security. Then I want to jump into taxes just for a few minutes here, gentlemen. Tanner, I mean, one of the most Googled questions out there, what is the best age to take Social Security? It's going to be different for everybody, right?
Yeah, now I think that answer, it depends. The response can happen with a lot of different things that we talk about, right? But it really, truly does depend. It depends on the current situation that you're in, that we're sitting across the table talking to you. What are you wanting to do? The friend at the golf course that, Do you want to work? That's a question to ask. Yes, I want to work. I want to continue. Right? Great. Continue.
Then we don't turn Social Security on for now.
Right.
Right.
Do you want to work? No, I don't want to work. I'm ready to play golf all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right? That changes the conversation. And so it depends is a common response here, but it's just to gather more information to understand somebody's unique situation, because everybody's situation is unique.
You know, you just remind me, you know, you guys know my dad's been going through heart issues, but we were at the hospital the other night, and his wife, Connie, she's about to turn 62. So the question was, Gary, do I turn on my Social Security or do I not? And my question was, are you going to continue to work? Now, she just works part-time as a school bus driver. So it might make sense for her to go ahead and turn it on, because that extra $1,100 a month would make a difference in their life, right? But if she's going to make more than, what, it's $23,500, somewhere in there now, then she can't do it. She's making about $21,000 a year. So I'm like, this just adds another $12,000 a year in income for you and Dad.
I love that you brought that up, because Tanner came into my office the other day and told me something pretty cool about Social Security that I actually didn't know about. And Tanner, we get so many questions about Social Security.
We sure do.
Tanner's actually getting a certification in it right now, which I think is awesome. But he came in and said, hey, if you're in this situation where you're the school bus driver, but maybe, you know, you turn on your Social Security and 2 years down the road, you decide you want to go get a better job making more money, or maybe you want to take that to more of a full-time position, and you start making more than what you can before you get penalized, you can actually call Social Security, put that Social Security on pause, and it will continue to defer and grow at that 8% compounded rate until you turn it back on, which I thought was awesome.
That is awesome.
They took away file and suspend years ago,
Right.
Which I thought that was, but apparently this is separate because of the penalty issue. They allow you to pause that Social Security payment.
That's cool. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and you know, still being in the certification process of testing and chapters and reading, right? You learn so much with this. So I'm right way halfway in the middle of it, right? But as Tim stated, you know, if you do your due diligence and call Social Security office ahead of time to report that I am now making over this threshold, or I'm continuing to work, right? Yes, it does pause for you and continues to grow. And when
That's
you come
great.
back, so you're not paying that back tax or getting taxed on.
Yeah. Bobby, we're not going to have a lot of time here. We're going to have about 2 minutes. But look at here. Look here.
It's Sammy the Duck.
Sammy the Duck is out. So what's that mean we're going to talk about?
We're probably going to talk about taxes.
Taxes. Now, we only got a few minutes here, but here's a great question that's being Googled out there right now. How do I avoid taxes in retirement? That's a great question.
Yeah, don't make any money. That's the only way to avoid taxes, right? But we don't want to do that. So there are a lot of ways that you can prepare to make sure you take advantage of the IRS regulations to reduce your income taxes as much as you can. And a big one we're talking about, you know, I could stand up on this desk right now and yell about it, is Roth conversions.
Right.
Or using a Roth as a savings tool for retirement. You don't get the immediate tax deduction, or in the case of a Roth conversion, you have to pay your taxes now. But then when you have a Roth investment, you can pull that money out in retirement and it'd be income tax free, which is massive, because we can talk about the debt we have in this country, $36+ trillion. And that's some a lot of people think that's some phony numbers, including me.
Yeah, I do too.
It's going to be a lot higher than that, $1 trillion a year just to pay the interest on that. Income taxes have to go up. The Great Big Beautiful Bill Act is likely going to pass, and so we're going to have a period here where we have some really, really great income tax rates, and so we're trying to convince people to pay taxes now.
Third lowest, Tim, right? Third lowest tax bracket we've ever been in?
Yeah, why not pay the taxes when taxes are cheap, right? I mean, that's when I want to pay mine.
That's right.
So, Bobby, to go back to that reference, and I'm a sports guy, right? You know, if somebody's out there listening, you know, in their car, and they love sports, they love baseball, America's pastime, right? So what you're saying is, I'm going to get that player that hits 40 home runs a year, right? But I'm also going to have 150 strikeouts.
Strikeouts, right.
Typically, the power hitter is going to have the strikeout numbers. And so it is a double-edged sword when it comes down to it.
But the whole point of this, gentlemen, if you do some careful planning, right, maybe you can have some tax-free money in your future. But you got to sit down with some fiduciary advisors and figure out how to do that. One of the best things we've created for you to do at home is plantodaytaxbill.com. Plantodaytaxbill.com. You can go in there and put your future, or what we think the future taxes are going to be against your current taxes. really might wake you up a little bit to go, wow, I need to come in and have a conversation with Tim and Bobby and Tanner about this and figure out how to get some tax-free money. My RMDs are going to be crazy, and I'm going to have to pay tons of taxes. Maybe you want to come in and have a conversation with these guys. Maybe it's time to do some Roth conversions. Like Bobby just said, we just had another bill passed. We're looking at some low taxes over the next few years. Let's pay taxes on the seeds versus the harvest. Again, go to plantodaytaxbill.com, put your numbers in there, then come in and have a conversation with us, and we'll try to figure out how to get you some tax-free money in the future. Hey, I want to thank you guys for listening and watching the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Give us a call. We'd love to have a conversation with you. I hope you guys have a blessed week and a blessed weekend. Take care.